In a world full of pretenders, spotting true strength from weakness is a powerful skill. Niccolò Machiavelli, surrounded by deception and opportunism, had to distinguish between the truly strong and those merely loud. For him, the most dangerous trait wasn't evil, but the inability to recognize weakness in others and within oneself. Machiavelli observed that weakness doesn't shout, it slips through the cracks. Strong men remain calm and silent, while weak men reveal themselves through subtle behaviors. Once you recognize these, you gain an advantage. Machiavelli mastered this art to navigate power. But how can we apply these insights today? Number 1. Over-justification. The first behavior that betrays weakness is over-justification. Machiavelli keenly observed that weak men often feel the need to justify their decisions in excessive detail. This over-explanation serves as a subtle cry for approval, rooted in insecurity. These individuals cannot simply make decisions with conviction. Instead, they over-explain, repeat their points, and seek validation from others to feel certain of their choices. A strong man, in contrast, does not need to explain his actions. He makes decisions, sticks to them, and moves forward with confidence. He knows his choices are sound, and he does not feel the need to justify them endlessly. This behavior stems from an internal certainty that weak men lack. Machiavelli recognized that a person whose identity is dependent on external validation will always be at a disadvantage. This over-explanation, this desperate need for approval, is a signal of insecurity, not strength. When you find yourself or others constantly defending actions or decisions, repeating points to gain approval, or trying to make others see your side, it's not a display of confidence, it's a signal of inner collapse. A man who seeks validation before he acts will never hold true power. Power requires silence, conviction, and the ability to make a move without having to explain it to anyone. Number 2. Weaponized niceness. The second behavior that reveals weakness is weaponized niceness, which might seem like kindness but is actually a form of submission. Machiavelli recognized that some men disguise their weakness with endless displays of agreeability, kindness, and helpfulness. They go out of their way to avoid tension, to please others, and to be liked. However, beneath the surface, this niceness is rooted in fear. A strong man can be kind, but his kindness is selective, deliberate, and never at the expense of his self-respect. He is not afraid to set boundaries, challenge others, or speak the truth, even if it creates discomfort. A weak man, on the other hand, will always seek to please. He will say yes when he means no, apologize when he is not at fault, and remain silent when he should speak up. His niceness is a mask for his fear of rejection, judgment, and conflict. When this facade fails to bring the validation he craves, he may turn bitter, passive-aggressive, or resentful. Machiavelli recognized this behavior as dangerous. Real power requires the ability to stand firm and face confrontation. A man who is constantly trying to please others, avoid tension, or be agreeable is not a person who can be trusted with power. Such individuals lack the ability to set boundaries and establish respect. They will always seek external validation to fill the void within themselves, and this makes them vulnerable. As Machiavelli saw, weaponized niceness is often a fade that reveals a deep inner insecurity. Number 3. Display addiction. The third behavior that betrays weakness is display addiction, the need for constant recognition and attention. This is the man who is always seeking the spotlight, who cannot sit still without being seen or heard. He craves praise, admiration, and public acknowledgement. Machiavelli noticed this behavior in many men, especially those who were desperate to feel important. These individuals constantly seek attention, whether through exaggerated achievements, public displays, or by crafting a curated image on social media. Machiavelli understood that this need for constant visibility stemmed from a fear of being forgotten. A man who constantly seeks attention is not secure in his identity. He fears that without recognition, he will cease to matter. This behavior is driven by desperation rather than genuine confidence. It is a form of weakness that exposes the individual as someone who lacks inner strength and self-assurance. A strong man does not need constant recognition. He is secure in his own value and doesn't rely on external validation to define his worth. The man addicted to display, however, will do anything for attention, lie, embellish, or betray others to keep the spotlight on himself. Machiavelli saw these men as liabilities because their actions were driven by a need to be seen rather than a commitment to a higher purpose. A person who craves constant recognition is easy to manipulate and predict. They become a puppet, performing for the applause of others. How Machiavelli used these weaknesses to his advantage. Machiavelli didn't just identify these behaviors, he used them. He knew that weak men could be leveraged to further his own goals. He recognized that the compulsive justifier, the people pleaser, and the attention-seeking display addict were all liabilities. But these men could be useful. Machiavelli would feed their weaknesses and turn them into tools of his rise. He would listen to the justifier, nodding along and giving just enough validation to keep him loyal. He would allow the people pleaser to feel important, giving him small tasks and responsibilities that made him feel needed. The display addict would be given the stage to perform, allowing him to bask in the spotlight while Machiavelli remained in the shadows, pulling the strings. These men would never betray Machiavelli because their identities were so fragile they would do anything to keep the validation he provided. But this isn't just about manipulation. It's about understanding human nature. Machiavelli recognized that weak men were not inherently evil. They were desperate for approval, and as long as they received it, they would remain loyal. The key to controlling them was offering just enough validation to keep them hooked while maintaining full control behind the scenes. The importance of silence and self-mastery. One of Machiavelli's greatest strategies was his use of silence. He knew that silence was not a sign of weakness, but a sign of power. A strong man does not need to fill every moment with words. He does not need to explain himself, justify his actions, or seek approval. Instead, he remains composed, strategic, and silent when necessary. This silence creates an air of mystery and authority that weak men can't help but gravitate towards. Machiavelli also believed in the importance of self-mastery. He understood that weakness can manifest within ourselves in subtle ways. The need to explain ourselves, the desire for approval, the craving for attention, these are all forms of weakness. And if we cannot spot these weaknesses within ourselves, others will. Machiavelli was constantly vigilant, asking himself whether his actions were driven by conviction or a need for validation. He knew that the moment he started seeking approval, he would lose his authority. Mastery over weakness. Machiavelli's final lesson on power was the importance of mastering weakness, not just in others, but within oneself. He believed that self-mastery was a daily battle. Every time he felt the urge to explain himself, to seek approval, or to crave attention, he asked himself whether it was a sign of strength or weakness. By recognizing these weaknesses early, he could eliminate them before they became a problem. The key to Machiavellian power was never about force. It was about subtlety, strategy, and control. It was about understanding the behaviors that reveal weakness and using them to one's advantage. Machiavelli didn't need to shout to gain power. He simply stayed quiet, observed, and manipulated the weaknesses of others to his advantage. And in doing so, he built an empire of loyalty and control that few could challenge. If you've learned something from this breakdown of Machiavelli's insights into power and weakness, It's time to take action. Master the art of silence, understand the psychology behind behavior, and make these strategies your own. Remember, true power isn't loud, it's calculated and deliberate. If you want to dive deeper into the mind of Machiavelli and gain more tools for mastering your world, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Stay sharp, stay silent, and I'll see you in the next one.